people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
News. Okay, we'll start with this. In men's super flyweight news, Estrada, then Saudi for Bam. Eddie Hearn on Bam Rodriguez's next fight. We're looking at November. Estrada has the rematch clause. Also talking to His Excellency about bringing Bam to Riyadh in February. For me, a fight in Riyadh is a unification fight.
My thoughts.
I had hoped we wouldn't get a second installment of the Gallo Estrada fight. As fun as that fight was to watch, I don't really see a need for a rematch given how it ended. A violent body shot that incapacitated Gallo Estrada. He wants to run it back.
Can he do better?
Maybe he could do a little better in the second fight than the first one, because in the second fight, he won't be shaking off ring rust. Going into the first fight with Bam, he hadn't fought in over a year. Well, now that he has fought, he got knocked out.
Won't be shaking off ring rust.
But I still have Bam beating him. I still have Bam Rodriguez winning the fight, and he has to make it to the next phase and the bigger prize. Fighting in Saudi, in Riyadh. What Eddie Hearn says could be a unification match. So there are only two other champions at the weight, just two. 4-division champion of Japan, Kosei Tanaka.
He's got the WBO.
And Puma Martinez of Argentina. He's got the WBA and IBF titles.
One problem.
Puma Martinez is fighting Kazuto Ioka again. He's fighting him again December 31st in Tokyo. And if he's fighting Kazuto at the end of December, he won't be able to make it to Bam in February. It's too quick a turnaround. Fernando Puma Martinez and Kazuto Ioka are ready to run it back. A rematch to one of the year's best fights is fully in play, as confirmed by Martinez's team. The defending WBA IBF Junior Bantamweight champion is once again set to hit the road, as their bout will take place on December 31st in Tokyo, Japan. Argentina's Martinez claimed a 12-round unanimous decision over Ioka in their terrific July 7th unification bout in Tokyo. The final scores 116-112, 117-111, and a horrific 120-108. Edward Hernandez Sr. did not at all reflect the non-stop action that took place. Nevertheless, Martinez, 17-0 with 9 KOs, retained the IBF title and won the WBA from Ioka. He also surged to the #1 slot in Ring Magazine's super flyweight rankings.
So you see what the problem is. If Puma's fighting Kazuto at the end of December, there's no way he could make it to Bam in February.
It's too quick a turnaround. It's too quick a turnaround for whoever wins that fight, whether Fernando wins or Kazuto wins, leaving Bam with only one other option to unify in February. Kosei Tanaka! And I'm not against that fight. That's a good fight, too.
But I don't think Kosei's ever fought outside of Japan. I don't know how he would feel about that. Fighting in Saudi at Riyadh season against Bam. It's a great fight for the division.
But I wonder how Kosei and his people would feel about fighting on the road. Back over to Fernando and Kazuto Ioka. He's currently #3 at Superfly, while Jesse Bam Rodriguez is the ring and WBC champion. News of the rematch was confirmed. Martinez and Chino Promotions, headed and founded by Marcos Maidana, during last Friday's ESPN Knockout telecast in Buenos Aires. The date continues a year-end tradition for Ioka, who regularly headlines a New Year's Eve show. The 4-division champion first appeared on the date in 2011 when he was an unbeaten strawweight titleist. Ioka will now enter his 13th bout on the festive holiday. All but one have taken place in Japan, with this bout marking his 6th straight year-end appearance in Tokyo. Ioka is 10-1-1 in December 31st fights. All have come with a major title at stake.
That's saying that he usually wins when he fights on that day. He usually wins when he fights on that holiday. That tradition.
This loss to Martinez snapped a 9-fight unbeaten streak since his 2018 New Year's Eve defeat to Doninietes in Macau, China. That loss prevented his bid to become Japan's first 4-division champion, male champion.
As Naoko Fujioka, also of Japan, she was the first Japanese fighter of any kind to become a 4-division champion.
The first female fighter to have done it, Kazuto aspired to become the first male fighter to have done it. As it stands, eventually Kazuto became a 4-division champion. One fight later, eventually, Ioka knocked out Ashton Palikte in the 10th round of their June 2019 WBO 115-pound title fight. He later lifted the WBA title from Joshua Franco in their June 2023 rematch.
That came at the expense of his WBO title. The reason being that he was under orders to fight Junto Nakatani, his mandatory challenger at the time.
And instead of defending his WBO against Junto, he chose to run it back with Joshua Franco.
So Junto ended up becoming WBO champion for a time, briefly at Superfly, and Kazuto ended up beating Joshua Franco for the WBA.
Kazuto Ioka has won titles at 105, 108, 112, and 115. His father, Kazunori Ioka, was also a pro boxer, as well as his uncle, Hiroki, a former 2-division champion.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Of his fighting family, Kazuto is by far the most established. The 35-year-old Osaka-born, Tokyo-based boxer aims to add to his incredible legacy. That said, Martinez still has plenty of goals of his own to accomplish. The unbeaten Argentinian traveled to Japan for the first time in his win over Ioka. He previously fought at home, in Dubai, and in the US. The latter, which housed his previous 3 bouts. All came in title fights, including his pair of victories over then IBF champion Jerwin Ancajas. He added an 11th round knockout of unbeaten Jade Bornea last June, prior to his career best win over Ioka, and that's a big scalp.
It's a very big win.
Rematches are often won by the fighter who can change, the fighter who can make the most adjustments irrespective of the outcome in the first fight. That's how these things usually go. And I feel like that's more Kazuto than Fernando, because Fernando's just an Argentinian version of Luis Lopez.
What?
He's not a textbook boxer. He's not a thinking man's boxer. He's not necessarily fundamentally sound so much as athletically gifted.
Physically gifted.
Martinez versus Ioka was months in the making. Martinez was in talks with both Ioka and then ring lineal WBC champion Gallo Estrada. Ioka came up short in his second bid to become a 2-division unified champion at the time. He was already Japan's first ever boxer to win belts in 4 divisions, but was denied further history in a December 2022 12-round draw versus Joshua Franco, which I mentioned.
The backstory there is Kazuto Ioka beat Joshua Franco. For those not aware, Joshua Franco is Bam Rodriguez's brother.
Joshua Franco is his older brother, the ring's number 5 pound-for-pound fighter. There were talks of Rodriguez facing Martinez Ioka winner at the time, as he was ringside for the fight. He went there to see it.
But this changes things, because if Kazuto and Fernando are running it back in December, the winner of the fight won't be available by February.
The silver lining. If Bam Rodriguez can instead get Kosei Tanaka in the ring in February,
the winner of that fight can take on the winner of this one, the winner of Ioka versus Martinez 2, later on next year, so that we can see an undisputed champion crowned at super flyweight.
Because I can't remember if there's ever even been one in the 4-belt era or before that.
An undisputed champion?
There's a lot of talk about the 4 kings, Chocolatito, Gallo Estrada, Carlos Cuadras, Sorrum Visai. But for all that talk, none of those guys ever unified this division. They fought each other, and they were great fights.
But they never unified this division. An undisputed champion was never crowned in that era. Perhaps one will be in this one.
That's the silver lining. That's the saving grace. That is entirely doable at some point next year. People aren't impressed with Bam because they say that while he did take out 3 of the 4 kings at Superfly, they were older and weathered at the time that he fought them. Carlos Cuadras, Sorrum Visai, and more recently Gallo Estrada.
I guess the feeling is that they want to see him against somebody younger and somebody fresher.
They beat unbeaten Sonny Edwards. He was young, he was fresh, but I guess that's not impressive, or impressive enough for some people. So ideally, he would settle up with the winner of Ioka versus Martinez 2. That would be the cherry on top of what is already becoming a very robust resume, and I look forward to seeing it.
Because I think he's going to beat Gallo. I think he's going to knock him out again.
We'll see what's what in the fall and winter months. Finally, in men's junior middleweight and super middleweight news, Canelo Alvarez says, "I'm not saying the Terence Crawford fight can't happen."
Is he starting to come around to that idea?
The WBO's order for its junior middleweight title holder, Sebastian Fundora, to fight interim junior middleweight and pound-for-pound 4-division champion Terence Crawford might appear to be a straightforward request, but it's anything but. In a conversation with Boxing Scene, minutes after the order came down, Fundora promoter Samson Lukowicz said he is convinced the 30-day deadline to strike a deal is actually less than a 15-day deadline because Lukowicz is convinced Crawford still has thoughts of fighting Canelo. Fellow 4-division champion Alvarez has a September 14th 3-belt super middleweight title defense against unbeaten Edgar Berlanga to get through.
And he will.
And Lukowicz speculates Crawford would only turn to Fundora if he feels his chance to land that lucrative showdown is dead.
There may be a light at the end of the tunnel for that fight for anybody who still wants to see it. It seems that Canelo's coming around to that idea. He's warming up to it.
I'm waiting on an offer now, and I'm certain one will not come until after the 14th, Lukowicz said. I'd like to find out right now if Crawford's going to fight for the money or the titles. I believe he wants the money. Crawford will do everything he can to fight Canelo, and his team will not call me until after the fight. Asked Wednesday about the Crawford versus Fundora fight being ordered, Alvarez told Boxing Scene he has not participated in any conversations about a Crawford fight since expressing his disinterest in doing so at his LA News conference earlier this month.
Time is of the essence.
Turkey doesn't waste any time putting together these mega cards. He's working on a schedule. Alvarez's beef seems to have been that they wanted a response from him at a time where he's getting ready for somebody else, and that he's only going to talk about another fight after this one is over. He stopped short of saying the WBO order means Canelo versus Crawford is dead. I don't think so, Alvarez said. I'm not saying that fight can't happen. That order doesn't matter.
He's leaving a door open to have conversations about that fight, though at the same time, because time is of the essence, people want conclusive answers. They don't want to be yo-yoed around. If you're serious about doing it,
waiting for Alvarez versus Berlanga to be complete would give the Crawford versus Fundora sides less than 2 weeks to strike a deal before the purse bid process is triggered, or Crawford could just walk away from it altogether to maintain his hope for Alvarez to fight someone else or perhaps retire. There is deep skepticism in the industry over whether the Fundora versus Crawford fight ever happens. Lukowicz, however, warms the conversation by saying this following Crawford's narrow August 3rd win by a unanimous decision over former champion Israel Madrimov. Winning the final 2 rounds on all 3 judges' scorecards decided the outcome in Crawford's favor after he failed to back or hurt the younger Uzbek fighter. Crawford is 37 years old and Sebastian Fundora will kick his ass, Lukowicz said. If Crawford fights the way he fought August 3rd, he has no shot. He will get knocked out by Fundora. Lukowicz said he retains hope the bout will happen, adding, if the price is right.
I don't like Samson Lukowicz.
He's a sniveling weasel, is what he is.
Prick.
But perhaps because of the racket that he's in, he has to be?
I don't care. I still don't like him.
While Crawford's career path is now being handled by his attorney, Harrison Whitman, at the same time, he is being backed financially by Saudi Arabia's Turkey Al Sheikh. Fundora fights for Lukowicz and under Al Heyman's PBC.
Further complicating things.
Samson can say this and that about Terence Crawford and what Sebastian would do to Terence Crawford. In reality, there's a reason that immediately after Sebastian beat Tim, you were looking at a Spence fight and not a Crawford fight. When it came to Crawford, what you were saying was that he was going to have to wait.
Oh, now you changed your mind? Why? Because he looked a little human with his Israel?
Lukowicz is fond of keeping the proposed fight with Crawford in the United States, and PBC offers dates throughout November and December in Vegas and LA, respectively, while Al Sheikh has a December 21st card scheduled in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, headlined by the Unified Heavyweight Championship between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury. Those are two different numbers, Lukowicz said of Fundora's escalated price for venturing to the oil-rich nation. We are willing to face him.
Uncertainty.
There is uncertainty in association with the Canelo Alvarez fight. He's keeping the door open, but you don't know if he's serious. At the same time, there's uncertainty involved in a Sebastian Fundora fight. They seem to be sticking to their guns that they want the fight in America. But what if Turkey wants to do it in Saudi?
Are they gonna bulk?
Asked how Fundora responded to the WBO's order, Lukowicz said he doesn't give a shit. He'll fight anybody.
Yeah, everybody says that.
Lukowicz spent several minutes after the order talking to WBO President Paco Verasel, first disputing that Crawford qualifies as a WBO super champion who is entitled to a far greater purse split as the WBO interim junior middleweight champion than Fundora deserves as a unified full champion. Verasel clarified that Crawford retains his super distinction because he carried it up to the 154-pound division after standing as undisputed at 140 and 147.
Make a long story short. Sounds like Samson is arguing that Sebastian is on equal footing to Terrence? No, he isn't. Terrence is bringing the Saudi money. Terrence is the bigger name, not just the more accomplished fighter, but the more big-name fighter.
Lukowicz said he proceeded to point out to Verasel that Fundora always pays sanctioning bodies the full 3% of his entire purse money, and not the shortened 3% of a smaller guarantee, non-pay-per-view purse that he suspects Crawford has paid. We always pay the full, Lukowicz said. It's honorable. The point that is being raised as Lukowicz seeks a greater percentage of the specified purse split the WBO can designate for the bout. It can't be 80-20 in Crawford's favor, Lukowicz said. How can Crawford ask for the purse split favors when he shortened the sanctioning bodies? For now, Lukowicz said he's unclear whom he'll negotiate with. Whitman called me once. Now we're ready to face Crawford, so I hope he calls me again, Lukowicz said. But I'm not expecting a call until after September 14th. I'm a nice guy, but I'm not naive. I have 30 years in this business, so we'll see. Crawford doesn't care about titles. He only wants money.
And you don't?
You think Samson Lukowicz and Sebastian Fundora care about titles? I feel like they'll chuck at least one of their titles, at least one.
If Errol Spence Jr. were available.
And I don't think he is, but if he were, I'm fairly confident that Lukowicz and his charge would be more than willing to lose one of the titles they've got to fight Spence instead of Crawford. The problem is, I don't think Spence is available.
So here we are.
I don't have the same appetite for Canelo versus Crawford that I had before, because now that I've seen Terrence at 154, 168 seems like a step too far. The fight that I would prefer to see is the Fundora fight. A last undisputed run.
The caveat.
Samson is a weasel. He can tell the boxing media whatever he wants, but I'm not convinced he's committed to making that Crawford fight. He's only puffing up his chest now because he thinks Crawford is focused on Canelo, so his fighter won't have to fight him anyway. That's why he's talking like this.
Talking shit.
But if things don't work out with Canelo, and the alternative is Sebastian, do you guys believe that Samson Lukowicz will go through with it?
Will he let it happen?